Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Hope everyone's getting settled. Sorry for being a couple minutes late here. My name is Lauren Tostenson. I do communications for the El Paso County Planning and Community Development Department, and I'm part of the team that puts together EPC Engage. So we're excited for you guys to join us today. Today we're going over EPC Engage. This installment is called Permits and Inspections. So we're going to do a very thorough run through of all the different permits and inspections that we do here at the county, also some state and federal permits and inspections as well, and hopefully get to answer a lot of anyone's questions about some of these processes, which can be kind of dense. So that's why we're here. We want to make this easier for you guys to understand and just kind of make it less cumbersome for you guys as you go through the process. So I'm gonna just a couple of housekeeping things first. We've got a Q&A section, which you guys will see. Hopefully you have two speech bubbles, kind of little message bubbles with a question mark. So those are going to be where you can go ahead and enter any questions. Feel free to do that throughout the entire presentation, and we'll go ahead and take those at the end. But we have about 30 minutes for questions, so feel free to put anything in there. Specific is fine. We're going to try and go over as much as we can, but if you guys have outstanding questions, we have all the experts here, so we want to be able to answer that for you. And then we're also going to go over some of the upcoming EPC Engage workshops that we've got planned for the rest of the year. So we hope that you guys after today will also tune into those. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Craig Dossey, who's our Executive Director of Planning and Community Development at the county, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Thanks, Lauren. As Lauren said, my name is Craig Dossey. I'm the Director of Planning and Community Development for the county. I supervise code enforcement, planning, engineering, but for today's purposes, I also supervise construction inspections. So we're really excited about this EPC Engage event. I think this one certainly affects a lot of folks out in the field, even folks that are in the office trying to get permits in place. So we're really excited to have this one as one of the first ones that we've done. We did a previous one about the engineering criteria manual. You can find that one on our EPC Engage website. Watch that video, and all of these will be recorded. So if you know somebody who can't make it today, but you think that they would benefit from this discussion, that video will be out there for anybody to watch. So moving to the next slide, Lauren.
One second. Here we go. Go ahead.
So if we can go to the next slide, Lauren, talk about some of our
sorry, the upcoming. I'm catching up. Here we go.
So upcoming, we're on a schedule to do these every other month, which would have hit obviously in May and then July. But some recent discussions with folks about permitting septic systems, otherwise known as on-site wastewater treatment systems, came up, and it seemed like a very important thing to tackle right now. Provided that information. So we're actually partnering with the El Paso County Public Health Department to go through that. Can we go back one slide, Lauren?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. To talk about on-site wastewater treatment systems. So that'll be actually this next month in April. I think that'll be a very beneficial exercise. We're also going to have members from Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment involved in that one to provide some insight on permitting larger, more centralized treatment systems. So a lot of entities involved in that one in April. And then in May, we're going to be covering the water supply review process. We're partnering with not only our own county attorney's office, who does the water sufficiency findings for the county, but we're also going to be partnering with the state engineer's office. We have multiple representatives from the state engineer's office that actually we're very excited about participating to provide a little insight on what their process looks like, what they look for, their submittal requirements, and just be there to answer any questions as well. And then July, we're kind of taking it back down to the ground level, so to speak, dealing with things that happen at the front counter, specifically residential site plans and other over-the-counter permits like driveway permits, which we're touching a little bit on today, but other things like temporary use permits and those types of applications. So really excited about these. As always, if you have other subjects that you would like for us to tackle in the future, please feel free to reach out to myself or anybody that's on our presenter list today. If you have a topic that you'd like for us to discuss, we're happy to do that. We will make sure that we're creating topics for discussion that are beneficial to those that need it. So with that, for today's discussion, or if we can move to the next slide, we're going to have 5 presenters. 4 of them really are going to do most of the speaking. We have Elizabeth Nykamp, who is our engineering review manager. She's available to answer questions. We're also going to have the inspectors, and when I say the inspectors, we have inspectors from 2 different departments here. We have Brad Walters, who's the Planning Community Development Inspection Supervisor, as well as David Parkerson is one of our lead inspectors for Planning Community Development. So they're looking at new development through the kind of the lens of the planning review and transitioning to construction of public improvements and those inspections. And then we also have Rick Ryder and Joe, and I'm probably going to butcher his last name, Renzik, and they actually work for the Department of Public Works for the county. So we're excited to partner with them today. Rick's going to be talking a little bit about permitting for work in the right-of-way permits, and Joe's going to be covering some of the stormwater permits. That's really his bailiwick. So we're happy to have you all here, and very excited about transitioning to this kind of partnered approach to provide you with this information. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Brad.
Good afternoon, everyone. Like Greg said, my name is Brad Waltz. I'm Inspection Supervisor with PCD. Today we're going to cover... Yep.
Sorry, it keeps auto going, so just forgive me for that.
Today we're going to go over permits and inspections. We'll cover all different types of county permits, state permits, and federal permits. We'll take you from start to finish through the application process to final review. Final steps, we'll go over how permits are closed out, what kind of approvals are needed for each permit. And then, like Lauren said, at the end of the presentation, we'll have about 30 minutes for questions. So please type your questions into the Q&A box and we'll have them at the end. And next slide, please. And next slide. Types of permits for El Paso County are work in the right-of-way permit. That's through Department of Public Works. The construction permit is through my office. Driveway access permits are through my office. Erosion and sediment control permit, otherwise known as an SQIP. Those come through planning and community development and through stormwater, both depending on the project. Builders erosion and sediment control permits, known as a BESQIP. Those come through, or usually typically come through with your building permit. Air quality permit is through the health department, El Paso County Health Department. The Colorado State permits are stormwater discharge permits, air pollutant notice, or otherwise known as APEN, and a dewatering permit. Those all come from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. The federal permits that we see most around here are the 404 permits through the Army Corps of Engineers. Next slide, please. When and why you would need each of these permits is what we're going to cover today. What kind of application is needed for each permit, if it's an online, paper, where to find those, and what is anticipated with the cost of each permit. And with the cost of the permits, be advised that the costs are subject to change at any time. And what does the general application process involve for each of these permits, and what to expect in an inspection and in review process for each type of permit? Next slide, please. Rick, you're up.
All right, yep. My name is Rick Ryder. I'm the inspection supervisor for Department of Public Works, and we issue the work in the right-of-way permits. When you need to apply for a permit, if you're working in the county right-of-way or setting up traffic control within the county right-of-way, you need to get a work in the right-of-way permit. You need to get that permit once a roadway goes through preliminary approval through PCD, and that'll get discussed in a little more detail later on. The cost for the permits depend on the type of permit. We have encroachment permit, excavation permits, obstruction, and maintenance permits. They all have a basic fee, and then depending on type of traffic control, and if you need to cut the asphalt, there's degradation fees. So the size of those cuts will affect the price of the permits. On the El Paso County website, there is a fee estimator. You can go in there and get an estimate of what your permit will cost, or you can call our permit application person and she can help you out and determine what that fee will be for you. The general application process, like I said, the permit is online at El Paso County website. You can print it, fill it out online, and then submit it with the required paperwork, which is traffic control plans, justification if you need to do a road closure, and bond and insurance. And that's all explained again on the website there. Our permits take 5 business days to process. That's not counting the day you supply it to us. That's taking into account that everything that needs to go with that permit is enclosed with that permit. If we need to reply back to you and you need to supply us with some additional information, then that 5-day period does start when we get all the required information. Road closures do need to get approved by the county engineer, so that typically takes about 10 business days to get her approval and submit it back to the applicant.
Oh, sorry, Rick. Were you
That's
done
okay.
yet? Okay. Here we go.
Yeah, and once you get your work done and you want to close out your permit, we do require that you do call Amy or email or call dispatch, and they will notify us, and then we can go out and inspect to make sure that that road patch has been completed per El Paso County standards. And then there's a 2-year warranty period against construction failure, settlement of any trenches, or settlement around any structures that may have been installed. And that's it.
All right, David, you want to take us to construction permits?
Yes, ma'am. Hello, I'm David Parson, one of the inspectors at Planning and Community Development. And today we're going to discuss when and why I would need this type of permit. A construction permit for early grading, final plat, site development, minor subdivision will be required before you start work. The kind of documentation needed to be, the kind of documentation you will need to have in order to be issued a construction permit will be the applicable state and county permits, which include things such as the SQIP, APEN, etc. Letter of credit, bond, financial surety, check with a W-9. And to be noted, bonds are not accepted with early grading. As you can see, fees will vary depending on the type of work you plan on doing. Once the plans have been approved, contact the PCD inspection supervisor to set up a pre-construction meeting. Next slide, please. After the construction permit is issued, the inspections team will be on site to monitor your construction activity. The activities that will be inspected by the PC inspections teams are going to be construction best management practices, or BMPs, overlot grading, installation of stormwater structures, utility installation, roadway construction, sidewalk for building certificate of occupancy. Also to be noted that the construction permit will remain active until we have preliminary acceptance. And I'll turn it back over to Brad Walters for your driveway.
Brad, real quick, I think there's a setting on here that's auto advancing. It's driving me nuts. Let me fix it if you guys don't mind giving me just a second. Sorry about that. That was going to drive us all crazy the whole time. Okay. should be fixed. Forgive me if it's not. Brad, you want to take us through these pictures of some of the examples you sent us?
Again, these pictures here are some typical inspections that we may see in the field. The first picture you see is the bridge deck pour that happened last summer. It was a rather large pour. It was poured, they started pouring it, I believe, 8 o'clock at night and finished up about 7 o'clock in the morning, poured all night. The second picture is typical rebar inspection. Before we pour, we'll do a rebar inspection, make sure the tie-ins are correct and overlapped. You know, with the number 4 bar, you need to be at least 12-inch overlap on your ties, things like that. Overlock grading, we inspect that for basic grade. We're not surveyors, so we can't tell you exact grade, but we can look at the plans and tell you if it looks the same as the plan. And the last one is, again, that bridge that we built. This was the girders that they set those when the inspectors were on site the whole time that was going on. And next slide, please. Now we're on to the driveway access permit. Why are these needed? 1972, the county decided that every property that accesses a county road will have to have a permit to control how many access county roads. If you live on a street with a curb and gutter, the permit's going to cost you $137. If you live on an open ditch road or roadside ditch, it's $207. If you're in a private subdivision or commercial, it's $104. Now there's a secondary access permit you can get. If you're a curb and gutter street, you can get one with 1 acre or more of property. If you're on an open ditch parcel, it's 2.5 acres or more of property. The application is on EDARP. That's our website. It's epcdevplanreview.com, which the next slide will have a picture of that. And once you've submitted your application through EDARP, the inspector will be notified on the EDARP system, and he will come out and look at your driveway access location. We ask you to have these clearly marked for us, please, so we can find out where they're going to go in, because we have to look at things like sight distance, make sure they're far enough away from an intersection, culvert is needed or not, things like that. And it takes us 2 working days is what we give ourselves to get these accesses done, because we have a busy schedule out there. There's only 3 inspectors for the entire county, so we're quite busy on all these inspections. Next slide, please.
Yep. There's the EDARP example for you.
Yep, there's EDARP. EDARP is Electronic Development Application Review Program. It's an in-house program that was designed by Craig and staff. It's a really good program we have. And you can see down in the lower right-hand corner where it's highlighted, Initiate Minor Application. This is where you would go to get a driveway access permit for a parcel that you're not planning to build right away. If you're planning to build, it will be submitted with your packet through Regional Building Department. It's also where you would go for a sidewalk inspection in the same place. And we'll talk about those here in a little while. Next slide, please.
I'm Joe Morensic. I'm going to talk to you about erosion and sediment quality control permit, also called the SQIP. You need these for land disturbances of greater or equal to 1 acre. You also need them in for land disturbances less than 1 acre in a larger plan of development, which is obviously, there's a typo here, but it's going to be larger than 1 acre if it's a larger plan of development. Anticipated cost for an SQIP permit is $1,925, including the application fee. The general application process, the application is available online via PCD or DPW's website. This is not an online submittal. You can just get the application from the website, and then the application must be submitted via hard copy. As Brad mentioned previously, which department you submit to depends on the type of project. Development projects go to PCD for review, and utility projects that need an SQIP permit go to DPW for review. The SQIP is part of that process. It is a review process. It's reviewed by PCD engineers and DPW stormwater engineers. Once approved, As Brad said, you'll schedule a pre-con, and then at that pre-con, we'll go over any specific stormwater issues that we foresee with the project. And then we ask that you give us 48 hours for an initial control measure inspection, at which point, once you've passed that initial control measure inspection, we will notify PCD and they will issue the notice to proceed. As it says here, obviously the 48-hour advance notice on initial control measure inspections and then subsequent inspections by department or DPW stormwater staff are conducted based on a schedule outlined in ECM Appendix I. There are several types of stormwater inspections, from routine and compliance to complaint response and reduced frequency. Next slide. Similar to the SQIP, we have the BESQIP, the Builder's Erosion and Sediment Control Permit. This is for residential building lots with less than 1 acre of total disturbance that are not part of a larger plan of development. It also includes land disturbances greater or equal to 1 acre, but on large lot single family homes or agriculturally zoned lands with a total area of 2.5 acres or larger and having a total lot imperviousness of less than 10%. The BESQIP permit runs about $100. The general application process works much the same. The application is available online through PCD's website or DPW stormwater website. And again, the hard copy must be submitted to PCD for review. The completed BESQIP application, the fee and accompanying documents, which is a site plan, signed statement from applicant saying you're going to follow the requirements of the permit. For a BESQIP, financial surety and a stormwater management plan or SWAMP are not required for a BESQIP. These are two things that are required for an SQIP. Expected inspection review process is the same, but with BESQIP permits, the county is not currently actively inspecting these, but only on an as-needed basis based on complaints, and then also due to sites located near sensitive areas or sites that have other permits, such as a 404 permit from the Army Corps. Next.
I guess I have to unmute myself before I start talking. Next is the air quality permit to the county health department. This is for 1 acre of disturbance up to 25 acres of disturbance. If it's over 25 acres of disturbance, that triggers the APEN through the state. And we'll talk about that permit here in a little bit. The anticipated cost is $165 for this permit. The online application through the El Paso County Health Department's website is where you apply for this. And they only come out and inspect these if there is a complaint. Next slide, please.
Now we're going to move on to state inspections, or state permits that also have inspections associated with them. The first is the stormwater discharge associated with construction activity. This is the COR 400,000 permit. You need these permits anytime you have greater than 1 acre of disturbance, or similar to the county's requirements, if you have less than equal to 1 acre of disturbance in a larger common plan of development or sale. You also need one if you have the possibility of contributing to violation of water quality standards or will be a significant contributor of pollutants to state waters. As you can see here, the anticipated cost is about $245. For the general application process, it's an online application submitted via the CDPHE website. There's more details on the CDPHE website about this permit. Expected inspection review process. It's about a 10-day lead time from the time you submit an application to the time they give you the approval. And then inspections are random unless there is a complaint.
Here's the APEN we spoke of earlier. This is the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment's air pollutant emissions notice permit. It's for any disturbance over 25 acres up to 500 acres. They have another permit that covers disturbances over 500 acres. The anticipated cost for this one is $216. This is applied for on a website called CEOS, C-E-O-S. It's Colorado Environmental Online Services, as well as the last permit Joe spoke about and the next permit coming up. They're all on the same website. Again, it's a lead time of 10 days before you see a permit with this, and the inspections on this, again, are complaint based. Next slide, please.
Back to water. The CDPHE dewatering permit, the when and why. Anytime you are discharging water from your construction site, this involves a little bit more review on their part because the likelihood of impacting waters of the state is going to be higher with dewatering activities. The anticipated cost in this permit is $500. The general application process follows the other two state permits we've already talked about. You use COs to apply. There's a lot more information about this permit and what entails in a dewatering site on the CDPHE website. Again, 10 days for a review process, and then inspections, as with the other two permits we talked about from the state, are complaint-based. Federal permits and inspections. Here we're moving from the state to the feds. The one we really deal with in the county in relation to construction is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers 404 permit. You need these permits anytime for any work, including construction and dredging in the nation's navigable waters or wetlands. This is a pretty big one. The application cost is $100. You apply online via the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers website. It's the Albuquerque office, but that also covers an office in Colorado as well. Colorado is part of the Albuquerque office. There are lots of details on this. There's a typo here. On the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers website, expected inspection review process. As anybody can tell you that's been through this permitting process, it can take some time. Expected is a 120-day turnaround to hear back on the first review, and then it goes from there. You respond to their comments, they take some time to review. You respond to their comments, they take some time to review. This can be a lengthy process, but this is a big one if you're going to be working in any waters of the state, or as it says here, the nation's navigable waters or wetlands. Other inspections.
Other inspections. Yes. The other inspection that we have that is not tied to a permit is, was referred to earlier as a sidewalk CO inspection, otherwise known as a certificate of occupancy. Why we do this is because when the developer builds a subdivision, they get preliminary acceptance on the sidewalk, curb, gutter, roads, everything there. And then the builders come in, and the builders do their building. The heavy equipment goes across the sidewalks. They tend to break some of the sidewalks. So before we give the CO approval to get the closing on the house, we go out and inspect the sidewalks and find anything that's wrong with them, mark them, the builder fixes them, and then we re-inspect it, and then they can get their CO. The cost for this is $104, and you can put several inspection requests on one request. If you have 10 houses closing next week, you can do 10 houses. If you have 20, you can do 20. We'll inspect them individually, but they'll go on the same inspection report. If you put 2 houses on there and one of them you don't want to close right away, well, we have to inspect it anyway because it's on that same report. If there's a second inspection, it's $104 as well. The third inspection goes to $500, and the fourth keeps going up from there. These are online through EDARP, as I talked about before, using that Initiate Minor Application button, and give us 2 working days to complete these inspections. Next slide, please. This is why what we don't want to see when we come. This sidewalk is covered in dirt and compacted mud. There's 2 stones broken, which we barely saw through the mud. But when you call the sidewalk inspection in, please have them cleaned and ready to be inspected. If we can't see it, we can't inspect it. Next slide, please.
Real quick before we jump into our final steps, I just wanted to remind everybody to go ahead and submit any questions that you have about anything we're presenting today or anything else related to permits and inspections. And also, I know we had some links on the previous slides. We'll be sending those out after the presentation along with a contacts list for you guys so that you can use those links if you do need to access those applications. And then now we can go to final steps, which I think David is going to start us off.
Thank you. So for final steps, we'll be talking about punch list. It is the responsibility of the developer or contractor to notify PCD when they are ready for a preliminary or final walkthrough. The PDC inspections team, along with the developer or contractor, will create a punch list of items needing to be repaired and or are missing. Punch list will be created by the inspector of that particular project. And just a little side note, projects prior to 2021 will need to pay fees for the preliminary and or final acceptance. All projects after 2021, the fees are included in the construction permit fee. Next slide, please. This, as you can see on the EDARP punch list, this is what it will look like when it is sent to the developer or contractor. It will show the location, it'll show the project name, file number, date inspected, and it will also show the location of each deficiency along with a note of the deficient area. Major defects and or failures. Next slide, please. The warranty period. Once the preliminary punch list is created and all items on the punch list have been corrected, the project will be in a warranty period for 2 years to cover workmanship and material defects. Major defects and or failures. This includes safety and ADA will need to be repaired in a timely manner once identified during this 2-year warranty period.
And preliminary acceptance is after the punch list inspection is complete. Once the punch list is built and sent to the developer and they do all the repairs, they call us back, we come back out and inspect it all, everything is completed to our standards. Then we'll go into preliminary acceptance, and preliminary acceptance can take up to 4 to 6 weeks to get through the Board of County Commissioners. We'll also do the preliminary release at that time to get your surety down to defect warranty amount. And once the Board of County Commissioners has approved all this, it can take 3 weeks to get your surety back to you. If it's an LLC or a bond, we get those back from the clerk's office and then we mail those out. If it's a check that you posted, the treasurer's office will write a check for you and mail it back to you. At preliminary acceptance, this is when your construction permit closes out. Your SQIP may not close out at this point until you have full final stabilization of your site. Same with your air quality permit and your state stormwater permit. You'll have to close those out separately. Next slide, please. Final acceptance, after that warranty period, we will do the same process. We'll do a punch list walk, make a punch list. They'll fix it. We'll come back and inspect it. And once that's all done, we'll get this back to the Board of County Commissioners, the same time frame, 4 to 6 weeks, and the same time frame to get your sureties mailed back to you. And next slide, please.
All right. So now we're going to jump into questions. That kind of concludes the formal part of the presentation, unless any of our presenters have anything else they want to add real quick.
I would, Lauren. This is Elizabeth Nightcamp, Engineering Review Manager, and I just did want to make one correction from what was said earlier. We prefer not to have bonds posted for early grading for Section 1 of the financial assurance estimate, but it's not in our criteria at this time, so we do also accept bonds for Section 1 on the early grading financial assurances.
Awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth. Anybody else want to add anything? All right. So we'll go ahead and take some questions. We've got a few good ones. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into the Q&A section here. Just give me a second to pull that up. So first off, we've got, what if we have 2 driveways but are only allowed 1? What do we do about that? And guys, just feel free to jump in, our presenters, whoever would like to take these.
Rick Ryder, can you take that question? Or Brad?
Sure, I can do that. This Rick Ryder. If you have a property size that I think it was Brad or David had talked about, 1 acre, if you have curb and gutter, 2.5, if you have an open ditch, you would get approval for that second driveway. If you have a site that has 2 driveways, you may get a letter from DPW stating that that is an unauthorized second driveway, and basically you cannot use it.
All right, seems pretty straightforward. We'll go ahead to our next question. Who should attend a pre-con meeting from the county for a new development?
For that, we would like to see the developer there. We would like to see any contractors that they can have on site, like the dirt work guys, the asphalt people, the concrete people, their stormwater folks, if they can show up. Anybody that they can get on their team to show up so we can answer any of their questions and they can hear what we have to say for the project if we have any concerns with the project.
And for the county side, just to help out the developers and the, just to help out the developers, we are inviting our engineers today to those pre-cons. The engineer who reviewed your project, we are inviting those to your pre-cons for you in case there's any additional questions that you have to the engineers on the plans.
Awesome, thanks, Elizabeth. All right, we got a lot of good questions, so thank you guys for submitting these, and we have some good time, so that's good. Can you define a, quote, common plan of development? The definition used in the BESQUIP and SQUIP is confusing. Joe, do you want to take that?
Sure can. That's tied to our state-issued MS4 permit, which defines common plan of development or sale as a contiguous area where multiple and distinct construction activities may be taking place at different times on different schedules but remain related. This means contiguous construction activity is located in close proximity to each other, which is defined as a quarter mile. In more simple terms, that means a larger plan development is really a housing subdivision. If your building lot is within a housing subdivision, then you're going to be required to treat it as such and go through the SQUIP process. If your house is located outside, your building site is located outside a larger plan of development and your site is under 1 acre, then you would get a BESQUIP.
Right.
I'd like to add on that, please, Lauren.
Yeah,
This is Elizabeth Nijkamp. We like to look at when you were platted. So if you were platted after February of 2008, then you are considered a part of that development that you were platted away from. So if you have a 50-acre lot back in February 2008 or March of 2008, right after that date, and you go to plat, then that is considered that larger common plan of development. So all of those acres split up. If you have a good example is the Claremont Business Park. They platted after February 2008 and their lots are all less than 1 acre, so they are required to provide water quality. So that larger common plan of development is if you are part of a larger group, and we cut that date off at 2008. If you were platted in 2006, that was prior to the definition of larger common plan of development being devised. So we don't consider that any longer a part of a common plan. I hope that makes sense.
Great. And just while I'm thinking about it, this was a suggestion from Brad. Here's a contacts list of everybody who's presenting today, including also Amy Carlson, who helps with our public works right-of-way permits. So go ahead and jot these numbers down if you guys want to follow up with any of these folks. And then in addition to that, it's kind of just important to note all of our county emails are just first and last name at elpasoco.com, with the exception of Joe, who is Joseph Morensic at elpasoco.com. But that way you've got the contact information. I'll leave this up here while we keep answering questions for the rest of the time, so you guys can jot those down if you want to follow up after this. All right, so we'll go back to our questions here. Just give me a second. All righty.
Lauren, there's a great one in there that says, what does it mean to discharge water from your site? Can you explain what is dewatering? That's a great question. Joe, can you answer that for us?
Sure can. So this dewatering permit allows for direct discharge to surface waters from your construction site. So essentially this includes discharges or really pumping of groundwater from your construction site, surface water, stormwater, or a combination of above that comes into contact with your construction activity. So if you're working actively at a construction site and you have an ingress of water, whether that's groundwater, surface water, stormwater, and you need to move it out of that site, you will need a dewatering permit.
Awesome. We'll keep going here. A lot of good questions. Thank you guys for sending these in. So the next one is, do you do a sidewalk inspection prior to the pour? And it says for compaction.
Yes, we do. We do form inspections prior to them pouring the sidewalk to make sure that the forms are the correct depth and width and cross slope is correct per ADA guidance. The compaction of the subgrade is the contractor's responsibility. We do get compaction reports from the geotech firm that did the compaction report. And we also do ADA ramps inspections for the same thing for proper slope, because they can't exceed 8.3 in a running slope or 2% cross slope, and they cannot have a negative slope, which would mean that the water would run into the sidewalk off the street.
All right, this one's kind of broad, but I have a feeling there might be a lot of these people wondering this, which is what has to be in place for me to get a building permit?
For building a structure, that would go through Pikes Peak Regional Building Department. Through our department, you would need an access permit, which is part of the packet you would submit through Pikes Peak Regional Building Permit. An SQIP would be, or a BESQIP would also go through that packet with Pikes Peak Regional Building Department.
So it sounds like they should start with regional building before they head to us. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Brad. How about for a large corporate project, like a new manufacturing facility or warehousing project being developed on undeveloped land, which permits would they typically need? So I'll repeat that. That was kind of long. For a large corporate project being developed on undeveloped land, which permits would they typically need?
If it was undeveloped land, they would first have to go through the process of review through our agency, through planning and engineering, and then depending on the size of the development, it would either be a site plan major or a site plan minor development permit. And the construction permit, they would still need the SQIP or BESQIP and stormwater discharge permit and air quality permits.
All right, this one's a little bit specific. I'll work for Co. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Communications, which is a contractor to Comcast. I think she means I work for Co. What if we get a call for an emergency job to fix issues for Comcast and it's a last minute call? Who do we call to get permission?
I'll take that. This is Rick at DPW. You can call our dispatch office here at DPW and email Amy and let her know that there's an emergency repair. We will let you go out and do that repair, but please, the next day or two, submit that work in the right-of-way permit to us. And on that permit, let us know that it was an emergency repair. And that's for anybody besides Co, water departments. If you have you're a contractor and you do individual residential water lines or sewer line repairs, same deal. If you have an emergency repair and a broken sewer line is certainly emergency repair, let dispatch and Amy know that you're going to repair that, and please get the permit application in to us the day or two after that.
Right, and Amy's email, if you can't put that together, it's Amy Carlson, so she's the second to last one there on the list. So you would just do first and last name together at elpasoco.com.
Right.
All righty, thank you, Rick. This one's also a little specific, but I kind of like these. So can you please speak to the permit process for a small commercial site? I believe this is less than 1 acre of disturbance that only needs a minor amendment to the SDP. Will the county need to see any construction documents, or is the MA to the SDP all that is needed? And can you also define those acronyms, please? I'll start that one over just to make sure that we've got everyone can hear that again. So can you please speak to the permit process for a small commercial site less than 1 acre of disturbance that only needs a minor amendment to the SDP? Let's start with that.
Elizabeth, you want to take that one?
Sure. I think I understand the question. So in general, your site is already less than 1 acre. So your permits are much more smaller. You won't have many of the permits that we discussed today because you are less than 1 acre. However, if it sounds like you've changed something from your site development plan, there may be a planning process that you need to go through. So if you've changed something on your SDP, which is your site development plan, then the planning side of the house needs to understand what you're trying to change, and they will determine, Nina Ruiz will determine if you need to resubmit something into the office. And what was the rest of that question, Lauren? I don't see it on the rest.
Yeah, I just published it, so it's in the Q&A, but I'll just repeat it here. Will the county need to see any construction documents, or is the MA to the SDP all that is needed?
Oh, okay, I understand it now. If you have an amendment to the site development plan and you already have all the other permits that you need, that small amendment won't change. You won't need another permit on top of that. A change to a site development plan won't kick in a permit that wouldn't already have been kicked in from the site development plan in the first place. Unless you change something in the right of way and you would need a work in the right of way permit, that may kick in. But in general, you would need no additional permits for an amended site development plan than you would for a site development plan. And whoever asked, if I didn't answer that question, please clarify your question. I'll be happy to try to answer it.
And you guys can definitely put follow-ups in the Q&A section. We'll do our best to get to all of them here. Who fixes issues with the road/sidewalk if there are issues during the warranty period?
If the issues are a safety concern, those will be addressed right away by the developer. Otherwise, if they're not, if it's just a broken or cracked stone, something like that, that'll go until the warranty period ends. We do the final inspection.
So they have until that final inspection to fix that?
Yes, but if if it's a safety issue, we get those done right away.
Okay. Another question, which is kind of for me, so will a copy of this presentation be included with the link info? Yes, so all of our EPC Engage presentations get recorded and they go on our website. So if you go to the main El Paso County website, navigate to the Planning and Community Development page, you'll find information on EPC Engage, and we'll have this recording up by tomorrow, along with the links on the website, as well as the other presentations that we've done, which as of right now is only one other one, which we did on the engineering criteria manual. So yes, these will be online and I can email them out as well. So you guys can rewatch this, and also you can share it with your colleagues, which is what we hope you'll do. All right, can an inspection be requested for Friday, Saturday, or Sunday? If so, is there any additional cost?
The answer is yes. Inspections for such things as paving, major concrete pours, things like that can be requested. Things like sidewalks and driveways, we don't typically do those on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. For Saturday, there's no cost, but for Sunday, there's a $500 fee paid directly to the Planning and Community Development Department, which that goes to the inspector's pocket because he doesn't get paid overtime for that Sunday.
That makes sense. Alrighty, we've got a question about SQIP. So will the SQIP process for large developments be a part of the pre-con and construction permit, or will this be a separate process after we have the pre-con permit?
This is Joe. No, the SQIP process is part of the construction permit application process and the pre-con process. You will apply for all of that, including the SQIP during the construction process, and then we go over stormwater concerns at the pre-con.
All righty. We've got
And your SQIP, paperwork. Thank you, Lauren. Your SQIP paperwork, if you're coming through planning and community development with a new development, that SQIP paperwork does come in electronically through the EDARP system. It doesn't come through paper when it comes through our office. And we approve that, and then we give it to you and assign a number to that during the pre-construction conference.
Anybody else? All right. We've got a follow-up on the water discharge permit. If it takes 10 days to review and an open excavation is full of water and we're expecting more rain, is there a way to speed up the review time?
This is Joe. I do not know. That is a state permit. So you would have to talk to CDPHE on that. Brad, do you have anything on that?
I don't. All I know is we require one to be in place when they start pumping, but I don't know if they have an emergency one in place.
Okay, so again, that CDPHE link, but will be included in the email that I sent out and also on the website. But guys, if you could, where's the best place to navigate on CDPHE's website to kind of start maybe getting in more information about that?
If you just type in CDPHE and dewatering permit, that'll take you to the main page for that.
Okay.
And it'll be dewatering. I just looked it up, dewatering general permit program. And then under that lists all the several different types of dewatering permits that are available. This COG 080,000 is the one we typically deal with. But there are a couple other ones there. That's probably the best place to start for any information on that dewatering permit.
Awesome, thank you, Joe. And a question kind of pertaining to the ECM as well. So which chapter or appendix of the engineering criteria manual can I find the info for permits and inspections?
That's chapter 5.
All right, easy enough.
And appendix I for the stormwater permit information, the SQIP and BESQIP, and then our inspection criteria.
All righty, we've got a couple more here and we have time if people want to submit a few more. Got about 5 minutes, or no, we actually have more than that slotted, but we'll kind of see how this goes. So another question, why are access permits needed to access a county road?
In 1972, the county decided to start keeping track of how many access points they have within the county. And that's where it's gone from there. It's how many accesses properties have, where they're at, if they're on a collector or an arterial, what the road classification determines where the access can come from too, and those permits help regulate that.
It also helps us monitor so that we don't have 10 access points in one location and none for the next mile, that we spread these out as best as we can, and that we have the right site visibility and for both vertical and horizontal. So we really need them to be able to know who's accessing the public roads and where.
Awesome, thank you. I don't think we went over this, but is there, they're asking if there was going to be any discussion about energy or HVAC permitting today. I don't believe we went over that, but do you guys have any comments on those topics, energy or HVAC permitting?
That would all be through regional building, and they would give you those type of permits. We only deal with everything outside, mostly outside of the footprint of a structure. We don't deal with any vertical structures unless they're a bridge or something like that. But vertical construction, like buildings, we don't have any control over those kind of energy or HVAC permitting.
So that's kind of a good rule of thumb too, because I know a lot of people get confused between what planning does and what regional building does. So basically, if it's inside the building, that goes to regional building. Things that are outside, like the lot, the sidewalks, the driveways, those kinds of things, that goes through planning. Is that correct, Elizabeth?
That is correct, Lauren.
Okay, so that's something I had to learn too. So, all right. We just got another one. When is financial surety collected?
Financial surety is typically collected at the time of pre-con. There's another time it's collected is time of final plat. If, for instance, you come in for an early grading pre-con, we will collect section 1, and you do your early grading until time of final plat, then the planners will collect the surety for the final plat.
All right. Joe, I think this one will go to you. How do I close out my SQIP permit?
When you're ready to close out your SQIP, you will notify your stormwater inspector that you want to close it out. They will conduct a final site inspection to make sure you meet the El Paso County criteria for closing the SQIP out, which is all outlined in Appendix I of the ECM. If you meet all of those criteria, then they, like I said, they will conduct that inspection report, and if they're satisfied with the conditions of the site, then they will notify you that your SQIP is terminated. A notice of termination notice will be issued, and we will also let Planning Community Development, Brad's group, know that we've closed out that stormwater permit.
Awesome. After the subdivision goes into preliminary acceptance, who is responsible for maintenance of the roads until final acceptance?
Once it goes into preliminary acceptance, the county is responsible for maintaining, such as snow removal and sweeping, things like that. If there's any damage to the road, such as a sinkage or a heave or something like that, the developer is responsible for that.
All right, how much time should I allow before calling an inspector to inspect my project? As much time as, I believe, okay, let me start that again. How much time should I allow before calling an inspector to inspect my project?
I think you're going to get multiple answers on that one.
Let's go for it.
For stormwater, the initial control measure inspection, we would like 48 hours notice. And the inspections after that are based on the criteria outlined in the ECM.
Anybody else want to jump in on that one?
Yes, for the construction inspection side, we generally like 48 hours in advance. The inspectors are flexible, but we can only flex so much when it comes to our time. So we'd like to generally have 48 hours in advance.
And pretty much for the same of the work on the right-of-way permit inspection, when you guys get completed, just let us know, and it'll take 24 to 48 hours to get out there and do that final.
Great. Anybody else? Okay. And if I have an emergency street cut repair or need to do emergency repairs in the county right-of-way, do I have to submit a permit application before I can do that work?
No, if it's a true emergency repair, please do the repair if you have water running down the street, and then do the application the next day or as soon as possible. We would like that in 24 to 48 hours after the emergency repair is completed, but we also would like to have you call dispatch and notify them here at DPW that you do need to go out in the right of way and do emergency repair.
Good to know. All right, we got one more here. Is closing a BESQUIP the same as an SQIP? Do I need to contact an inspector? And what if the inspector is unknown?
As I said, currently for BESQUIPs, these are properties located outside a larger plan of development that are less than an acre. We are inspecting those on an as-needed basis, so that's complaint driven, or if they're near sensitive areas, or let's say they have a 404 permit. Then we'll look into doing inspections on those as outlined in our ECM. As for closing a BESQUIP, no. Once the CO, the certificate of occupancy, is issued, we consider that BESQUIP closed. We currently are not doing notice of termination inspections on BESQUIPs.
And Joe, just since we may have had some people join us late, will you remind us what those two acronyms mean?
Yeah, the BESQUIP is a builder's erosion control permit, and an SQIP is an erosion and stormwater quality control permit.
Okay, and what's the difference between the BESQCP and just the E?
The SQIP is for lots larger than an acre or less than an acre in a larger plan of development. And a BESQIP is for a lot smaller than 1 acre in size.
All right, thanks. I just figured if someone jumped in, they probably think we're speaking a different language, so wanted to.
It's a lot of alphabet soup.
And I have another question on that too. So can an SQIP be modified, such as removing or adding areas under that permit? And what is the process for doing that?
Yeah, so SQIPs can be modified. You would modify that in your site plan, on your site plan map, and then you would also need to notify your DPW stormwater inspector that you've made those modifications, and they'll come and inspect and look at your swamp. If there's any other issues that may need PCD to weigh in on your activities, they would inform you of that.
Awesome. So that looks to be our last question, unless anyone wants to add anything else. Do our presenters have anything else they'd like to add before we kind of start to wrap up here? All right, sounds good. The last thing we're going to do is just kind of remind you guys of what we've got coming up here. So our next slide, I'm going to toss it back to Craig Dossie, our Executive Director of Planning and Community Development, to just refresh everyone on what we've got coming up so you know what to add to your calendars. Craig? Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, again, we inserted an additional event here in April. We were on an every other month schedule, but some of the things that have come up recently, we felt like it was very appropriate to have an additional event on on-site wastewater treatment systems. So really excited about that, working with the health department and CDPH&E. And then in May, looking at the water supply review process with the county attorney's office and the state engineer's office. And then heading into the summer, we talked about residential site plans and other over-the-counter permits, working with our front counter staff to do part of that presentation. So again, these are up our next 3, but as we kind of move along, this is not going to be kind of a one and done thing. We'd like to continue to have topics for discussion. So as I mentioned earlier, if you have something that you'd like for us to cover, please send that to me or to Lauren or anyone else on this call that works for the county, and we will be glad to take a look at that and hopefully get that on the schedule as well. So with that, I just want to thank everybody for attending. Really appreciate all of our presenters taking the time to put this together, answer questions. You know, they're very busy, as most of you are probably aware. We're all pretty busy nowadays in the development side of things, but it's important that we take the time to do these kind of events so that we're getting out in front of things and providing you all with the information you need to be successful. So with that, I will let everybody go, and thank you again for attending another EPC Engage event. Thanks, everyone. We hope to see you in April for permitting on-site wastewater treatment systems. And again, this will be on the Planning and Community Development website. So have a great day and reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.